Most armies wanted one thing: a clean battle on open ground, clear lines, clear formations, and a winner decided before sunset. But the Marathas did not fight like that at all, and that is exactly why stronger enemies kept losing to them. By the end of this video, you will understand how they did it, because once their enemies understood the pattern, it was already too late. The Marathas rose in western India, in the rugged lands of the Deccan. This was not easy ground for a large and powerful imperial army. It was filled with hills, forests, narrow passes, and stone hill forts. And under Shivaji, the Marathas learned something very important early on. If you cannot overpower an empire, do not fight the empire's battle. Instead, you change the battlefield and force the enemy to adapt. That was the real secret behind their success. The Marathas did not try to look unstoppable in open combat. They tried to become impossible to catch and impossible to control. Their style of war became known as ganimi kava over time. Hit fast, disappear faster, and never stay in one place too long. Attack where the enemy feels safe, then vanish before they respond. A Mughal or Bijapur army could be larger, richer, and more powerful. They had cavalry, artillery, elephants, and overwhelming confidence. But confidence becomes dangerous when the enemy refuses to stand still. A Maratha force could appear, suddenly strike, and disappear without warning. They attacked camps, destroyed supplies, and cut off communication routes quickly. Then they vanished into hills the enemy barely understood or controlled. That is what made them truly terrifying to fight. Not because they always won direct battles, but because they controlled the war. They made stronger armies feel blind, confused, and constantly under pressure. Imagine marching with a massive imperial army across unfamiliar terrain. You have numbers, weapons, and confidence in your victory. You believe the smaller enemy is retreating and running away, but they are not retreating. They are pulling you deeper into danger. The road becomes narrow, the land rises, and the trees surround you. Your scouts stop returning, and your supplies begin to run low. And somewhere above you, hidden in the hills, they are waiting. This was a completely different kind of warfare. A Maratha warrior did not need the heaviest armor or biggest weapons. He needed speed, endurance, and deep knowledge of the land. He needed discipline, because a fast strike means nothing without control. Attack too early, and the enemy recovers and fights back. Attack too late, and the enemy traps you and surrounds your force. But attack at the perfect moment, and everything begins to collapse. That is why timing was everything in Maratha warfare, and that is why their forts were so important. To outsiders, a hill fort might look like a place to hide, but to the Marathas, it was much more than simple protection. It was a supply base, a lookout, and a command center. It was a place to recover, regroup, and strike again later. The enemy might capture one fort, but lose control everywhere else, because the Marathas were never tied to one location for too long. And then came moments that proved this system actually worked. In 1659, Shivaji faced Afzal Khan of Bijapur near Pratapgarh. Afzal Khan came with a larger army, expecting an easy victory. He believed he could crush a smaller force without much resistance. But the Marathas pulled the battle into terrain they understood perfectly. What followed became one of their most famous early victories. Pratapgarh showed that this was not luck, but a working strategy. The Marathas were not reckless fighters chasing glory. They were careful, patient, and extremely aware of their limits. They chose where to fight, when to strike, and when to disappear. And if the answer was to leave, they left immediately. There was no shame in survival, because survival was the strategy. That is why stronger enemies hated fighting them so much. A large empire wants control over the battlefield and its conditions. The Marathas turned battle into pursuit, and pursuit into frustration. And frustration slowly turned into exhaustion and eventual defeat. An imperial army could win a battle and still lose the campaign, because roads remained dangerous and supplies remained constantly vulnerable, and the Marathas remained in motion, always just out of reach. That is what made their warfare feel so unfair. You could not predict them, trap them, or force them to stay, and even when you thought you had control, they were already gone. So what was a Maratha warrior really part of? Not just an army, but a system built on movement and precision. Speed, terrain, forts, surprise, and patience all work together. That is how a smaller force can weaken something much larger, not by being stronger everywhere, but by striking where it matters most, and that is why their story still feels powerful today.